The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
Hello and welcome to Practically Magick. I am your host, Courtney Pearl. I am a pagan folk witch, card reader, healer, spiritualist, Celtic priestess, teacher, artist, and mystic seeker. I'm here discovering true magic and wish to share that with you. Today, we are going to have a guest on, Brenda Kradolfer, who is a relationship coach. In our last episode, we went over some of the healing aspects and awarenesses around codependency patterns, and I've invited her on today to help us talk a little bit more about that and relationships, and hopefully even a little bit of magic and how that plays a part in your relationships, coming into romance, coming into how to navigate a marriage, how to make a marriage last, things like that. But before I have her on, I'm going to start with our typical routine ritual, which is to pull a card for the episode. And I'm using my True Heart deck today. And I've already got it shuffled a few times here. I'm going to go through. All right. Today's card that I have pulled is the High Priestess, which I love that this is what came up because it seems like every time I have a guest or an expert in some capacity, usually so far they've been women, I am so pleased that a goddess or a priestess or an empress has been kind of the central focus of the card pulling for their episodes. And that is completely the way divination works. It is just shuffle the cards and see what comes up. And in this deck particularly, I love it because she has an image of the priestess sitting on a moon, a crescent moon, and the moon is almost like a portal into another world that is like the ocean and sun and clouds. And in the room that the High Priestess is sitting is two golden pillars on either side with ancient symbols on it, and she has a backdrop of stars and pomegranates. I associate pomegranates to do with wisdom and to do with the goddess energy. And I think what this is saying for us today, definitely we are going to have someone who has experienced things, who has come to some awarenesses about those experiences and really truly wants to share that with the world, her knowledge. And it's a very feminine energy. So this pomegranate seeds are sort of an offering. They have a lot to do with the goddess Persephone, the symbology being fertility and kind of a magical sense or power that comes with being at the beginning, at the rebirth of something. And I think that's what our topic today is going to center around a lot, because it's going to talk about, we're going to get a chance to talk about how to revive and rebirth that part of you that is kind of our maiden part. When we're new in a relationship and it's very lovey-dovey and you very much love your partner, the love is so present and so aware and so kind of wrapped up in your lust and your crush and your all the butterflies in your tummy and all of the things that can tend to fade after a relationship has gone on for some time. And when you get to know each other, and the patterns that you create together as a couple can sometimes be sabotaging and you don't even realize it. And sometimes even the self-healing work that goes into wanting to make your relationship better or make your relationship work, it directs it right back at yourself. Whatever it is that you are looking to heal or make better, you tend to turn that mirror back around on yourself and say, well, what self-reflection do I need to do? And we're going to talk a lot about this in this episode today. So I'm really excited because I get to share with you a little bit of my experience in relationships, and Brenda's going to share a little bit of hers and how she came to become a relationship coach, and some of the magic in the relationships making them work is more about your own personal power, especially if you happen to be a woman listening and it's you who wants to put in all of the effort and put in all of the work and says something about where we're at right now feels stuck, or it feels stagnant, or it feels you haven't felt those butterflies in a while. And you feel like you very much want to see your partner step up. Sometimes being able to access that feminine power and what it is that we have a part to play in all of it really can make you feel very powerful. Realizing that you cannot control your partner like maybe I thought I could, I'm speaking of personal experience here, tends to have the opposite effect than you want it to have. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, but I love that the High Priestess card comes forward because it's kind of this mysterious, there's a lot of layers to it. There's even a staircase behind her that you can kind of see behind the backdrop. She has, there's a set of keys right at the bottom of that staircase. And I don't think you need to be a genius to point out the symbolism there of the work being done or whatever it is you're looking to ascend to, raising your vibration, being maybe more of an expert in your field. You're going to need to take those keys yourself. You're going to need to step into the next portal, into the next room of your becoming. And the High Priestess is just a card that magnifies that power that it's, I guess the best I can describe it is the opposite of imposter syndrome, because the High Priestess is sitting here with her headdress with the full moon on it. She has robes. She's claiming her own sovereignty and place in as a knowledgeable, wise figure in this subject, in whatever it is that we're talking about today. There's even beams of light shining through, like through the pillars, and I love that. Now, before we get to our guest, I want to do a little brief story time. I took a little bit of context from a story that I saw in a Buddhist, one of those Buddhist stories you tell to kids. And I took this story that I found, and I'm just going to adapt it slightly for our story time today. So there is 4 animals. There's a hare, an otter, a monkey, and a jackal in the woods. And they have learned how to live and work together, each playing their part in the water, in being swift, in being predator and prey, in becoming friends. They have learned to use the space around them and accommodate one another and live peacefully. And this is so grand and wonderful that the hare says, let's make sure that when we see other creatures coming through the woods, we will offer our help in any way we can, because we've found prosperity, we have found friendship, we have everything we need. Let's make sure we share this with others. Let's pass along the gratitude and pay it forward, as it were. And so the other animals agree. And pretty soon there is a man walking through the woods, and he's very hungry. He's been traveling for a long time, and the otter sees how hungry he is, and he goes and he catches fish, gets lots and lots of fish, and takes it to the man and says, "Here, I've got you some fish. I noticed you were hungry." And the man is so grateful, and he says, "Oh yes, this will make a wonderful dinner tonight and feed me for days, in fact." So he just plops those fish into his backpack and heads on down the woods. And the jackal sees this man and again sees that he looks kind of skinny and maybe hungry. And so he just says, "I'll go find food for this man." And he goes into the nearest village because he can run really fast. And so he runs to the nearest village and he gets some milk curd and he brings it back and he gives it to the man and says, "I noticed you were hungry. Here's some food." And the man says, "Well, I just got some fish from the otter, but this is great. Thank you so much. And puts the milk in his pack, and even partakes of some of it so that he's not as hungry, and he continues on his way. And pretty soon he comes across the monkey, and the monkey sees him again and says, "Oh, this man has come through our woods. What can I do for him? What need can I meet of his? Well, I think maybe I'll go get him food. Because that's a nice thing to do. I like food." And he runs around picking bananas in the trees and gets as many bananas as he can, and he gives it to the man. And the man says, "Wow, this is a lot more food than I need. I have fish, I have milk curds, and I have bananas now. I think I'll be sustained for a while, and this is so great. Thank you so much. I probably didn't need this many bananas at this point, but I'm still very grateful. So thank you." And he takes the bananas and he goes on his way, and he doesn't say anything about not needing the bananas because it would be rude to not accept a gift. So he just takes it gratefully. And he goes down the woods a little bit further, and he meets a hare. And the hare, again, is like, I need to do something for this man. I wonder if I could find some food for him. And he goes everywhere looking for food. And the hare does not really have a great way to get food. He finds some grass, and he's like, "Well, I like grass, but the man probably doesn't eat grass. Humans don't eat grass as much as we do. So I don't really have anything to give him." And he gets so upset, and he's worrying and stressing about this so much, that he watches the man from a distance, and in the bushes and in the trees, and kind of watches him. And the man starts to unpack his pack for the night, getting ready to eat something and to rest. And he pulls out a pot and he puts it on the fire, and he's getting ready to cook his fish, and he's pulling out the rest of his food. And the hare is so focused on what he should be doing for the man that he gets so upset. He thinks to himself, "Oh, I know what I can do, because I know that men like to eat hares sometimes. Hares they'll cook them in their pots." So the hare is just so focused on trying to help the man that he runs towards the campfire, getting ready to leap into the fire, getting ready to leap into the pot, to sacrifice his very life so that he can give this man something, that he can be the hero, that he can be kind and generous. And just as he's about to reach the pot, he feels the hands of the man grab hold of him and pull him down towards his lap. And the hare is a little bit confused because he thought he was going to get cooked. He thought he was jumping into the pot. And he says to the man, "I have nothing else to give you. I don't have anything for you to eat. I know you don't like grass, so I've come to give you myself, and you can eat me for dinner." And he feels the man's hands just stroke his fur gently. And he says, "Oh, kind hare, you are so generous, and your friends in this woods have been so generous. But I have plenty to eat now. Thanks to your friends and thanks to all of your generosity, I really am very satisfied with what I have to eat. And I wouldn't want you to give up your life for me to have something to eat. So really, all I could use right now is a friend to sit by the fire with me, and perhaps even let me stroke your fur, because you are so soft and gentle, and I just gained so much pleasure out of just being able to pet your fur." And the hare realized he actually liked that too. That when the human pet his fur, he felt loved and soft and safe, and so he offered that to the man, and the man was very happy, and the man was able to eat and also have friends around him at the fire. And I tell this story to help us start our discussion topic on codependency and relationships, because I want people to be somewhat aware that sometimes what you think someone needs, or if you think dishonoring yourself to get them what they need is the right way to show up in a relationship, there might be other ways. There might be other options for you to show love and also hold boundaries that keep you safe and to meet your needs. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today in this episode. So I am going to prepare for having our guest on. Hi, and we are here with Brenda Kradolfer. She's a relationship coach. I have her on with me now. And so we are going to start out by talking about, Brenda, tell us a little bit about what you did to come into this line of work, becoming a relationship coach.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'm excited to be here. So from the very beginning of my marriage, I kind of struggled. Like I had doubts before we even got married. And then I kind of pushed them all to the side because I really wanted to get married. And I had a good guy and I was too scared of like the unknown. And this was like a known path. And I thought I worked through a lot of stuff during that period, but then we got married and everything that I thought would kind of maybe iron itself out or just kind of work magically when we got married, it didn't really happen that way. And so at first it was just like little things, like my husband would go out like golfing with a friend and I literally had no friends or anybody else that like was around us that I could even think of to hang out with. I'm like, he's supposed to be hanging out with me and how could he go do this? And I didn't even have those kind of thoughts. It was just, I was sad and kind of like, what? Like, this is not how it's supposed to be. Like, we're each other's person now. And just little things, like things he would say. And it would just like, I just started like spinning in regret and like, oh my gosh, I made a huge mistake. And so that was kind of the beginning. So there was like a falling out then. And we kind of worked through it. But then those little things just like kept eating at me. And like we never had any big blowups or anything, but it was so easy for me to go to that place of like, I made a mistake and how could I have done this? And like I would get through it and something would come along that would help me and be like, oh, like it would give me the right perspective and things would be okay for a little while. But it was just like this pattern that kept on going. And like if something really big came up, like big life decisions, having children, those kind of things, if we weren't on the same page, it was challenging. So all that to say, at some point, I read this book and I had done a lot of work on myself already. And I had learned things and I had figured things out that made it like good. Our relationship was good, but I read this book once and kind of as preventative medicine, it just seemed like that's what it had in it. And so I read that and it was so eye-opening. And then every time after that, like anytime something would go wrong, I would go back to that and I'd be like, I know that I got to get back to that book. Like, I know it had the answers. And so eventually when I was going through some life transitions and wanting to find something that was just for me that I could do, I kept coming back to the idea of helping women in their marriages and sharing the things that I had learned along the way. And so that's how I got to be a relationship coach and help married women.
Yes. And you're going to talk a lot more about this. So you have your own podcast, right? Tell us about that first.
Yeah, the Restored Wife podcast. So yeah, so far I've been interviewing and chatting with some of my other friends who have also gone through one of these like journeys in their relationship, who've practiced the skills that I use. And so we chat kind of about the before times and then how it is now and the things that have come, like the positive results that we've had as a result of just changing the way we do things, making, some of it's pretty minor, but it makes a big difference. And yeah, I just share kind of my journey and other people's journeys and how we became how we went from like being martyrs to being happy wives and happy in our relationship.
Yeah. And I needed you to tell us about it and tell us it's called The Restored Wife, because that is kind of the key to it, is like restoring the wife. It's really something that I wanted to point out in like working on relationships or working on healing, is that kind of my journey in coming to a place where I understood what it would take to have a really good relationship, what it would take for us to get back to a point I wanted to be at.
Mm-hmm.
It was about looking at myself. And I know our stories are a little bit similar. I mean, I relate a lot when you say like he would go out with his friends and you were like, well, what about me? My husband and I met when I was 16 and he was 18, just graduating college or high school. Sorry. No, high school. I wish we were a little bit further into it and graduating college, but no, we were in high school and I was at a place where like I had never really found my footing as far as friends went in social groups. I had some friends, but it was hard for me to feel like I really belonged anywhere.
Mm.
And so when he kind of took me under his wing, he was like, we started dating, but it was like his friends became my friends. And anytime he wanted to go hang out with his friends without me felt like a huge problem. I was just like, if you go hang out with your friends, then what am I supposed to do? Just sit around at home and like be alone?
Mm-hmm.
That feels so unfair. Like, and there was a lot of factors. It's kind of like brewing the perfect potion. If you could brew the perfect potion, all these ingredients in it, it became this codependency pattern between he and I. By the time we got married, when I was 19 and he was 21, it was like we couldn't go anywhere or do anything without each other. It was very much like his problems are my problems are his problems. Both of us were so wrapped up in each other, we didn't really know any other way to be at that point. And I'm sure this is like super annoying to all of his friends who were like, your wife is calling you again, or like, just situations that popped up. And I was like, you can't leave without me. You can't do things without me because I don't have anybody else to do anything with. And, fast forward 20 years later, I'm the one with like more friends and more social, and he's super introverted and like doesn't really care to go out and hang out with people, but you never know how those things can work out.
Right. It's like a flip.
Yeah, it totally flipped. And I think in our journey, just coming to like with his struggles, and I've talked a little bit before in this podcast about him having a struggle with addiction, alcoholism, and us going through all that was a catalyst for me to be like, something just isn't working here. Like with his struggles, me making them my struggles as well, or thinking that these were struggles I had to fix or I had to wrapped up in somehow. It was like this defining moment of like, look at that and see if that's really working. Is that really going to work for you? If you're going to make this about you or make this your problem to fix, how is that actually going to work? And when I finally came to a realization, because part of me was like, hey, you know what? Our marriage is great in every other capacity, but he needs to get sober and he needs to figure this stuff out. And then our marriage will be good. Like that was our only hang up. And I firmly believed that for a long time. Like I was like, he just needs to figure himself out and then we'll be fine. And I mean, it may be that everything happened at once, but it wasn't until I started going, well, wait a minute, what about me and my part in this? And where do I find happiness and peace through my own healing journey, despite whatever he's got going on? Because he may sober up, he may become healthy, he may find his path, he may not. That's a really scary thing for someone to face, just to be like, he could drink himself to death. Like that could literally just happen. I wanted to believe that that was not going to happen, but I wanted to be like, what if? And how then do I move through this marriage being okay? And so what I like about your program, that was kind of like a long way around to say it, but what I like about I did Brenda's Empowered Wife workshop. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
It was called. Yes. So we did that with a group of our friends together. We did this workshop with Brenda, and it was really just the focus was on us. Like how we as wives show up in our relationship and how we show up in our marriage. Right. And so that's kind of the journey that you went on too, is realizing that like all of these thoughts you were having towards your husband, and like I was having the same kind of thing where I was like, he just needs to fix himself.
Yeah.
Okay?
To change. If he would just change these things, then we could be happy. Or
We'll be fine because I'm perfect. I don't know what he's doing. I'm
Yeah.
great.
Hey, I'm a super good wife. Totally.
Yeah.
I love what you brought up too of like, it's like, where do I end and he begins? And where does he end and where do I begin? Because I think so many of us are taught, like when you get married, you become one. But what does that really mean, you know? And can you take that to like an unhealthy level to where like you're explaining like a codependency situation where you can't do anything on your own. And so you're really just trapped and subject to whatever they're deciding to do. So I love that you pulled that out too and got to this point of like that wasn't going to work anymore for you to like make his issues your issues.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like there's limits, right, to what you can even. There's not really anything you can do in that situation, right? Other than.
Yeah, that's what I learned. There's no amount of like getting mad at the person. There's no amount of manipulation or whatever I thought I was doing, whatever I thought would help, where I was like, now I did take some space for a little while, and I had to get to a place where I was like, this isn't punishment. Because that's kind of the way that I probably used it before, was like, I won't even be around you.
Yeah.
That. But it had to be, and by the way, Al-Anon is a great program for people who have loved ones who struggle, because that was really helpful to be able to be like, listen, there is no amount of me getting angry. There's no amount of me enabling or anything, like just nothing. There was nothing that I could have done that would have catapulted his healing or made him do anything differently. But just, I had to be like, what do I have control here? And you're right. It was kind of like leaving my power up to him.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely like handing over my personal power, my own sovereignty, and just being like, you are in charge of our happiness. So get it together and let me nag you and be mean to you until you do it.
Yeah. And it feels really helpful, or like it will help in the moment. You know, I think a lot of us think if I nag enough or if I show him how much this hurts me, he'll change. Or we yell or we give ultimatums because it feels like that's where, you know, that's the only thing we can do. But I love what you're saying. I think that what I hear you saying is that like that didn't work. And you had to get to a point where it was like, how am I, you know, what am I going to do next? If this path isn't working, if this path isn't changing him or changing our relationship, what else do I have?
And like no judgment whatsoever to anyone listening who might be going through something like that. And you are literally going through those steps and stages, because I think that's kind of what you need to do. Honestly, you kind of need to try those things and then go, okay, so that made it worse.
Right. Yeah. You can like see it. You have the evidence that it didn't help.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so tell us, so just briefly, like the 6 intimacy skills that your workshop and the book has.
Yeah. So when I say intimacy skills, or when you hear them, I'm not talking about like physical intimacy. That's super important, but I'm just talking about like those interactions that you wouldn't have with anybody but your spouse. The close, connected, the silly conversations, like that kind of intimacy, like the fun, this is my best relationship in the world kind of intimacy. And so many of us aren't taught how to be successful in this relationship. It's a singular relationship, the relationship between spouses. We don't have this relationship with anyone else. And there's a lot of advice out there. And frankly, a lot of it's bad advice. And so So what's really crucial is learning how to have intimacy in this relationship. And it looks a lot different than I think intuitively we might think it should look, or, some of the things that we hear from well-meaning people about how to, maybe it's the ultimatum thing, like, okay, you just got to give them the ultimatum. You got to set the boundary. And I think it's coming out a little bit more, but like boundaries aren't about what the other person does. It's about what I do. And if I reach my limit, then this is what I do for myself, kind of a thing. So the 6 intimacy skills really are a set of skills. They're tools that anyone can use in their relationship. There's cheat phrases. And so I teach those in my workshop, and we get to experiment with them and try them and see, like, this is my experience. And I share that. And then you get the opportunity to go and try it for yourself and see if you have similar results, or what results you get from practicing them.
Yeah. Is there anyone in particular that like stands out to you? Like, this is one that you move to a lot, or it's like your go-to?
Yeah, I can think of at least 2. The first one is self-care, just prioritizing the things that make you really, really happy. It's so easy to skip over that part. I skipped over it when I read the book. I mean, I read through it really fast, and I was like, yeah, get me to the part where I change my husband, But it's crucial. It's so critical. I was just talking to somebody today about it. Like, it feels like a luxury, but it really has to be, at least for me, like built into my day and into every day, or I just can't be the kind of like mom and wife that I want to be.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to get depleted quickly.
Yeah. And it's true for everyone. Like, I think that it was in your workshop that bringing up self-care, and anyone listening right now is going to be thinking, oh yeah, I've heard about self-care for years. Like, we've all been hearing about self-care all the time. Put your own oxygen mask on first and all those things.
Right.
But first you do kind of gloss over it because you're just like, yeah. I'm told this all the time. We know. Self-care. But I think when you taught us that, I think the moment it changed for me was realizing that when you start to feel resentful, when you start to feel irritable, and you start to feel like these tiny humans and this grown-up adult human that I'm married to, they're all just taking too much from me, and you feel that feeling, it's like a signal, like you have not taken care of yourself enough, and therefore you don't have that to give to them. And I just had a conversation with my husband recently about this, because he's just been like, go, go, go. I mean, he fills his weekends and he fills, all of his time. And I said, and then there was a moment when I was like, I needed his help with something. And he was like, I'm burned out. I can't help you. And it's like, okay, I get that. But like I said, it's up to us individually to make sure that we are getting self-care, so that if our spouse does need us for something, we can be there for them more often. And like, especially if you agreed to help, which was the situation that this was he was like, I'll help you with that thing. And then the time came and I was like, hey, I really need your help with this thing that, remember, we agreed we were doing. And he's like, I'm just too burned out. I'm just, I'm exhausted. And I was like, well, yep. That's what happens.
Yeah. Well, that brings up a good point, because I think like a lot of times men are better at self-care than women. They're good at shedding things off and being like, hey, I can't do anymore. And then like the only thing I can do is, play a video game or whatever. Like, and so I know for me, like, I resented my husband's self-care. That was like when he was sitting on the couch, like on his phone, and I was doing dishes. Yeah, the resentment would come up real fast. And not because he was doing anything wrong, although it seemed like it. It was like, okay, if he would just see that I'm doing dishes and I need some help, or I would, this kitchen is a mess, or the kids, or whatever, then it would be better. But what I've learned is, like, if I'm feeling resentment, that's my signal, like you said, to stop doing what I'm doing and go find something to fill myself up, or to do something that distracts me, or anything other than the thing that I'm doing that's causing that old song to play in my head that like my husband doesn't get it, or, you know, if he would do X, then I could feel Y.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that goes back to too a lot of like how we were raised. That I need to be doing and moving. I need to be playing my part. I need to be helping out. It's part of the family dynamic to always be like doing your chores, and on top of it, having our parents be like, you better have that done. And you know, don't just sit on the couch and be lazy, like get up and do stuff. So then we end up projecting that onto our spouse because we're like, I'm up and doing stuff. Why are you sitting on the couch not doing anything?
Yeah, it's hard. And as women, I think we do so much that we don't even realize it. Like, my husband could call me at 10 o'clock in the morning and be like, "What are you doing?" And I'll say nothing. Or like, what have you been doing? What have you been up to today? You know? And like, I don't know, not much, you know? But if I sit down and write down everything that I've done already, like it can fill up a whole paper just with all the little things that I'm doing. I'm accomplishing things, and there's like a million things, you know, as a mom and any person really. But like, I just don't even think we realize how much that we do, and that it's okay to take those breaks and to refill our tanks. And I so get what you're saying about like, yeah, we were just told to do certain things. And so when we're doing them, it's easy to look at others and be like, hey, why aren't, like, what's wrong with you? Where didn't you get the same lesson that I did?
Yeah. And another like example of codependency is dishonoring other people to honor yourself. So, you know, and being able to be like, well, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm holding boundaries, but now I want you to be doing what you're supposed to be doing. And
yeah, projecting that back. Totally.
and then like feeling like you got to like drag that person along, which I have been guilty of many times and still am. Yeah.
Yeah, same. And it's so hard to see it too. Like when you're in it, you don't see it, right? Like you're doing the right, like you're doing it all. And like, yeah, it's really, it's hard to get that bird's eye view of kind of like, oh, maybe there's another way.
Yeah. And it brings up one of the other I don't have my notes with me. I should have brought my notes from the class, from the workshop. But when we talked about control, and it was like, you know, if you're doing these things and you want a reaction from him and you want, you know, certain things to play out, you have certain expectations. How much of that is control and how much of it is then if you were to just have like that show of respect, like you can handle this. I respect and honor you and that you can do it. How much of it do they then just do it on their own? Like they don't need to be controlled into it and manipulated into it. Most of the time they're like, oh, I'm willing to come and do what you need. And yeah.
But sometimes if you're doing like, when you're in that space, you're getting the opposite result, right? Like you're like, you have this certain expectation, you want this outcome. And when that is the focus, often like you'll find that people resist what you're trying to get them to do. And you're like getting the opposite of what you want.
Yeah. That lesson that week, I was like, oh, here we go again. Not from you, but from me. Like, I'm like, sometimes I'm just, you know, admonishing myself, like, you've been taught this lesson over and over and over again. And it's just going to be something that is my particular sticky cell. It's my particular thing that like comes up a lot in my life where I'm like, yeah, falling back into patterns of like trying to control everything and trying to show love and create safety and certainty by like controlling my people. And it's always been my go-to pattern that I'm like, all right, here we go again. That's what I need to work on.
I love that you're aware of that and that it's something that you're like, okay, this is something that I can see playing out in my life, and just being aware of that is such a huge step. I know it was for me. Like I just didn't even know, you know, I didn't know that I was being controlling or manipulative. Like I was like, I'm doing this for your own good and out of love. And if you would just listen to me, or like if you would just see what's missing,
Yeah. Well, we think we know. We have all the answers.
Right. Yeah. I've seen this little thing. I can't remember exactly what it says, but it's like, maybe you know what it says. It's something about like for less, I don't know if it's a stress, but it's like, I wish I had it in front of me. For less, I'll just paraphrase it, but it's like, for less stress, resign as manager of the universe or something like that.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's just a good reminder to me, like, oh yeah, if I try to like control everything or manage the universe, which I think I try to do sometimes, that's where a lot of stress and just overwhelm kind of takes me down.
Yeah. That's so true. I've put that crown on my own head many times. And some people, I mean, even in my own family, they call me the calendar queen because I'm the keeper of the calendar. And then it just so happens that I will get resentful when I do all of that, keeping the calendar. And then someone's like, what do we have going on Saturday? And I'm like,
I made the calendar.
I'm like, see that big whiteboard in the center of our home that's giant and it's a calendar? That is literally everything you need to know right there. Like, I have used the I can't phrase in moments like that.
Okay.
That was another good tip that I was given in the workshop, which is like when something feels like I know I can't do this without resentment afterwards, if I do this task for you, even if it's super easy and I can just do it real quick, if I'm going to feel resentful about it, I need to do this. I can't.
Yeah.
That I've gotten better at it.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. It's a great cheat phrase it's a way of setting a boundary and really protecting your own well-being. And yeah, I love that you've been able to use it with when somebody comes to you and wants something that you can do, but it will, what's it going to cost? And is it worth it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say I've used it wrong. And, I think you just have to go through the phases of learning how to do something. But I in the beginning would be like, I can't because, and then I would just go into it. And then it would create a fight or it would create this moment of tension. And I would be like, you know what? All I had to do was say I can't. I don't know why I had to explain. I don't know why I had to go into it. That was just inviting something that didn't even need to be talked about. And we could just say, I can't.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't feel like enough, like in the moment. But yeah, there's power. There's definitely power in less sometimes. I bet it's a hard lesson to learn for sure.
It is for me. But I think that one of the ways that I have incorporated in the energy work and the healing world and the work that I do is kind of like being able to identify what energy that people are holding on their bodies that are not their own. How much are we holding of our spouse? Are we holding their stuff? Are we absorbing their stuff and making it our own because we think in some capacity that it's going to help? We have this lie that we've been telling ourselves that oh, I'll take all that on. I'll feel it with you. I will fix it for you. I will hold it for you. And we just keep piling it on and piling it on. It doesn't help the other person. And even when it's an actual literal thing we're doing for them, it's kind of like, are we giving this message that's like, oh, you can't do this. You're not hard enough or you're not strong enough. Subconsciously, are we telling them you can't do it? So it's kind of that respect factor. We're showing even though I'm oh, I'll keep your schedule for you. I'll be your assistant. I'll stay home and make sure that you are at all your appointments for you and everything. I'm doing all that, but am I really just saying, you're not an adult? I'm going to do it for you. You're not very smart or something.
Yeah. What is the subtext of some of the things that we do or think. And yeah, I love the work that you do. And it was like, that was part of my self-care, was really like, there were things that would really get under my skin. And once I kind of got my foundation right, like, okay, my husband's not out to get me. He loves me. He cares about me. He wants me to be happy. Like really simple things that I could get confused about really fast. Like I said, like he does something that I don't agree with. And I'm instantly thinking like, oh, he just doesn't care about me, or he just doesn't understand me. And it was so quick. But once I got that kind of more settled in to where I was like, okay, I know that he loves me and cares about me. So why do I feel so uncared for when this thing happens? And so I got to the point where it was like, I have to fix this in myself. Like I realized it's not him anymore. And it took me some time to get to that place. But then doing like Reiki healing and other things like your healing through art workshop were like such good self-care for me. And to look at certain things that I've been carrying or that had affected me that I didn't even realize were there. And so I've experienced it a lot with different just healing things. And I mean, it's great to get together with other women and share that. These things were kind of missing from my life for a while. Like I just didn't see that I needed them. And I did, and I do, like on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, because all these different modalities of healing, and you and I have chatted before about breath work and some other things and sound baths. And I mean, I truly believe that everyone has its own space in our life for like what could come up, what awarenesses are we getting from that. I've heard of people that have huge transformation in a sound healing. And I love a good sound bath. But I had a great emotional release in a breathwork session. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know that was possible, because I had always done emotional processing, IPT, what I do. And that felt like one that was like deep within the body. Like the body was releasing all of this stuff about letting go of control and those nice, beautiful themes that just keep coming up over and over in my life. But yeah, I think that the emotional process, the integrated processing technique that I facilitate is a great way to take some of the things, like you're working on your relationship, you're working on all of these things in your life, but you're like, but I want to know like why, where did that start? What do I need to like release there that might be able to keep me from being triggered every time that comes up?
Yeah.
And, just going kind of under the stuff.
Yeah. And I'm the only one that can do it. Like my husband couldn't do it for me. Like it didn't matter what he said, right? Like even if he said the perfect thing, which he does sometimes, but when I was filtering it through all the junk, and all the things that I was still holding on to, I had to do it for myself. It was nothing that he could really fix. And I think a lot of times in the beginning, like in the early days of our relationship, it's what I wanted. I wanted him to fix all this stuff, say the perfect things, do just, all the imaginations of things that I thought should happen. And like that was a lot to put on him. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. I thought this is what you do as a married couple. Like you heal each other, and I think there is some that can happen too, but so much of the work, I had to do some work, and I didn't even realize it for a while there.
Yeah. That's a good point, because I think when you look at like those dynamics of what's going on when I look at like my early marriage versus now, and this is a question I'd like to pose to our audience, and maybe if you have a story or if you have something, you can message me. I want to pose, how much are we trying to heal our spouse? Maybe not even heal, maybe just fix. Maybe how much are we just being like, fix yourself?
Yeah.
Right? And then how much are we expecting them to fix us by showing up exactly with the right words and the right behavior that we need? And if you really look deep down, and it's a hard reality to face, it's hard to look at yourself and go, oh, that's a shadow part of myself. That's a part I didn't realize I was, doing, or I was sort of sabotaging myself with. But am I trying to fix them? And am I expecting them to show up for me in a way that's like fixing me?
Yeah.
Which isn't really fixing at all, if you think about it.
Right.
It's like, are you saying all the right words that I want to hear? And
Yeah.
are you like saying it, if I make a mistake, I want to hear, oh, that's totally fine. You don't need to worry about it. You're perfect. And they're not showing up that way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That would maybe cause some problems if I was expecting that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that sounds really familiar to me. Like, definitely. And like, I could just insert myself into that story. And yeah, the outcome was more resentment typically.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're never going to show up exactly like that because they're not fixed or healed or whatever. And we're not either. And, imperfect people trying to live life together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, that's one thing I want people to know too, is like most people, we're all just people. I mean, not most people, we're all just people. But when you come into a relationship, like, you have two imperfect people. And I think sometimes it's hard to see that in ourselves. And yeah, I think I just hear a lot that kind of is like, if you can, I don't know, it feels like if you can become a robot in your relationship and your husband can become a robot, then you guys can be perfect robots together. And like, that's not what I help people do, but I think I can get stuck in that too. Like, thinking like, okay, like we've been talking about, like, if he just does it this way and I do it this way and my way's better anyway, then we'll all just be happy little robots. And we're not. Like, we all bring, our own stuff to the table.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to have everybody listening just sit with that and ask yourself those questions. How much am I expecting that? And as you were saying robots, I'm remembering this thing I saw where they had two AI computers talking to each other.
Okay.
And they basically started fighting. Which is funny because it's like you would think that these AI robots could somehow be the perfect.
Yeah, interesting.
But they were basically like, hi, how are you? And the other one's like, hi, how are you? And the other person goes, I just asked you. And they're like, I know, but I just asked you. Are you a robot? No, I am not. Like they've gone back and forth. Oh, it's hilarious. And I'm like, if you haven't seen that, go watch it because that'll just show you that even robots cannot seem to manage their relationship.
That's funny. Yeah, I want to check that out.
Okay, so I want you to tell us all of the ways that people can find you, especially if they want to do this workshop we've been talking about, because it's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. My website is BrendaKradolferCoaching.com, and it's Kradolfer with a K. And on there right now, I actually have I don't know when this airs. So it's probably, anyway.
Yeah, we're like mid-June.
Okay. You're so ahead of the game. Okay, so I'm doing a free class. If you go to my website, I typically have like a free class option, which is like you can get a taste of what we do in the workshop. And then when I'm running a workshop, like I'll open it up for a week or two and people can register to do that workshop. And it's all online. We do it all through Zoom, so you can be anywhere in the world. And we meet for 4 weeks, typically once a week for just a couple hours, and go through these skills and have opportunities to practice them. So BrendaKradolferCoaching.com. And then I'm on Instagram at Brenda Kradolfer. Yeah.
Okay, and I will post all of those on my blog. So each episode, I have a blog post on my website so that I can put up all those resources, clicks and links, and everything that people need to know so that they can find you if they need to. And the books that we've been talking about and anything else that might be important. Other books that I've come across that are just helpful with relationships.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes. So thank you so much for being on with us. And I hope everybody had as much fun listening as I've had just chit-chatting with my friend.
Thank you. You're welcome. It's been fun. I love it. We're gonna have you over on the Restored Wife podcast pretty soon.
Yeah, I will tell all my secrets.
Yay! That's what we do there. We share all the secrets, all the relatable things that you don't want anybody else to know.
That's where I'm going to spill all the beans of everything that you've ever wanted to know about me. So yeah, I definitely want to. My audience will want to check that out when that comes out.
There we go. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you. All right. That was Brenda Kradolfer. She is the podcast host of The Restored Wife, and she's got a couple of episodes that she's working on, getting some guests together who have done her workshop or those that she has experts on relationships. It's going to be an amazing podcast. I cannot wait to work with her some more. And as we were just getting off of that call together, she was talking. I was talking about the tarot card that I pulled at the beginning of the episode, and I showed it to her, the High Priestess. If you're available on video, I can show you a little bit of a close-up there. High Priestess. And it's funny because she said that she had actually been pulling that card when she pulls for journaling. She has been pulling that card, the High Priestess, a few times in the past few weeks. So I think that's amazing. I wish we had talked about that on the air, but I'm telling you now. So thank you so much for listening. That was an awesome little chat having with Brenda, and I can't wait for more with her. Next week, I want to talk a little bit more about in-between spaces. In the Celtic tradition, the in-between spaces are very sacred. Probably in more traditions than just Celtic, I imagine. But because I particularly respond to the Celtic spirituality, I am going to talk a little bit more about what do the in-between spaces mean? What are the in-between spaces and how can we use them to help us in our own using magic and being aware of ourselves? And I want you to use magic in your everyday life to strengthen relationships, heal, prosper, and thrive. If you are looking to do some more inner work when it comes to building your relationship or on your healing journey through a relationship issue, I highly recommend some emotional process sessions. And you can find that with me on prism-healing.com. Look for the IPT emotional process in my services, and you can book that from anywhere. I can do it over the phone, or I can do that in person in my own healing space if you are local in South Jordan or Northern Utah area. I would also like to invite you to follow me on Instagram at prism_healing. I probably do my most sharing on Instagram because it's a place where I can do live videos of card readings or the full moon. And I will be doing more of those in the future. So look for those live videos. You can join us for a full moon ritual or a full moon discussion. And I just like to use Instagram to share anything and everything that I'm studying or learning about. So that's a great place to follow me for daily things, witchy tips and whatnot. I'm also on TikTok at Prism Healing. I'm doing my very best to be a good TikToker, but I will be honest, it's a little hard. And I guess I've been in like TikTok jail or something for a while. So you can really help me out by following me on TikTok and watching my videos and going back in my past videos to watch them and like them and comment on them. So that would be a super great support to me. Then I can keep creating content for you. And look out for my next Tarot for Tips event. And I do have another Healing Through Art experience that is happening at the end of this month in June. This is going to be an emotional process like we discussed earlier in the episode. Brenda talked about how much it has helped her. She has come to my Healing Through Art workshop, and it's a really great way to experience some meditation, some journaling, and we get to paint out our emotions with colors, using that vibrational frequency of colors to kind of lift them off the body and onto the canvas. It's a really transformative experience. I'm very proud of those workshops. So you can find those events on my website as well, or book yourself a private, personal, intuitive card reading session with me. I also do group sessions if you'd like to book me for an event, and I can come read cards for your event. And then look out for my blog there on my website. Up at the top, you'll see blog, and every episode of Practically Magick is outlined, and I have a personal account of the episode and some extra additional resources as well as books I'll be posting about codependency and relationships that were mentioned or even not mentioned in this episode and the previous episode. So thank you so much for listening. And I would like to thank Ride the Wave Media, just Blaine, for always supporting this podcast, editing, releasing, doing all the background hard work and producing the episode. I would like to thank Sarah at Daybreak Treasures Boutique. If you find that boutique online, you will see all the amazing featured artists that are local to Daybreak. I myself am a featured artist on the website. So if you would like to take a peek at my artwork and see what sort of things I've created, that's a great place to go. It's an online boutique. And she also sponsors all of my events, the Healing Through Art Workshop and the Smart Heart Art Workshop for kids. So I would like to give a special shout out to them at the Daybreak Treasures Boutique. And to all of my pals, my good friends and supporters at the Daybreak Business Community. This is a personal shout out to you guys for hanging out with me at luncheons every Wednesday, for the Daybreak Business Community, for just being a community that supports each other. You guys are awesome, and I love each and every one of you so much. So if you're listening and you hear that message for you, please come to me personally and say, I heard you thank me on your podcast. And then I'll know you're listening. All right. Send me your questions, comments, anything on those social media pages. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Find me, chat with me, give me a shout out, give me a hello. It'll just make me feel so warm and fuzzy. And as always, witches and wizards, go make magic.